Good afternoon and welcome to our training session on federal fund purchases. I'm Doreen Tannenbaum with Procurement Services. We're doing something a little different today and have our slides available for you to follow along. I'm going to drop that in the chat right now. And as always, our training sessions are recorded and will be sent out via email by next week. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat and we'll answer them during our Q&A portion after the presenters are done. Next slide, please. You can find previous training sessions and slides along with step-by-step instructions on our website. We have interactive training courses also available on UCLC. Next slide, please. If you'd like to set up a one-on-one group or a group training session, please email us at procurement@uci.edu. I'll now turn it over to Snehal Bhatt.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking the time from your busy schedules to participate in this training. So welcome. Today we are going to talk about federal fund purchase requirements. Many of you probably may have attended the training that we conducted in August of 2022 on the same topic, but we realized and recognized that there is a lot of turnover that's happening in the departments. And since this is extremely important for us to be in compliance with, because we do receive over $500 million in federal funding, we want to make sure that we re-emphasize the importance and the need for having this requirement understood by one and all in the various departments. So we are actually doing this training again in a relatively short period of time. We also felt like it's important that we, again, let you all know that if you are going to be moving along and going somewhere else, please make sure that you train the person who's going to take over your responsibilities and let them know about this requirement so that they're not caught off guard or taken by surprise when they start processing requisitions. So we want to make sure that the departments take this initiative seriously and make sure that they have their folks be cross-trained and new employees who come on board be aware of this requirement. Also, we are going to actually, last time we had shown the various screenshots of how to go about in sam.gov. Today we are doing it a little differently. We are actually going to have, we are going to walk you through the actual website on sam.gov and show you how to navigate in sam.gov itself. And then, of course, we'll go through the Q&A and answer any of the questions you may have. Next slide. Okay, so before we get into any training, this may sound like a broken record for many of you, but it is very, very important for us to re-emphasize and reiterate this particular items that you all need to understand that just because we are in central procurement, it's not just our responsibility to understand and know all the policies and follow and comply with those policies. It is the requirement and a necessity for everybody in every department who has anything to do with procurement or purchasing is aware of the various policies. We have listed those policies on this slide here. That you should try to get familiar with if you're going to be involved with purchasing. It's also very important for you to understand that the delegate authority for approving any purchases actually lies with the central procurement. So unless you have been given the authority to make purchases like for the thresholds of $5,000, you should not be making purchases above your thresholds because you don't have the delegated authority. It's also important for you all to know that the signature authority for any contracts lies with procurement. So please do not sign any contracts because you don't have the delegated authority. And also make sure that none of your faculty, PIs, or anybody in your unit does not sign any contracts on behalf of the university, because that would not be a legally binding contract, okay? Again, everybody is also responsible for any purchases that they make for the university, so please be mindful of that. Okay, so essentially, when it comes to federal fund purchases, the two key things that they look for most cases, especially because these things apply to purchases that are of smaller dollars. There are additional requirements for purchases that are of higher dollars, which are like $250,000 and above or $750,000 and above. But in particular, the auditors are always looking for debarment verification and anti-lobby verification for any supplier that we are utilizing for any federal fund purchases. So essentially, what is debarment is basically that we want to make sure that a supplier that we are purchasing items for on federal funds are not debarred or suspended by the federal government, which is really what the key requirement is for us to make sure that these suppliers that we are buying from are not debarred or suspended. Again, the reason why we are asking the departments to look into this is because we want the departments, anytime any department, any PI, any faculty, any staff member says that I want to buy XYZ from a particular supplier, and you know that this purchase is going to be on federal funds, the first thing you should do is you should warn them that this is going to require debarment verification to make sure the supplier that you are selecting is not debarred. So I would recommend that anytime that stage comes about when a supplier is chosen, you should go ahead and do a debarment verification if it's on purchases on federal funds. So that way, if they are debarred, you can instruct and warn the PIs or the faculty and say, hey, this is not a supplier that we can use, and we need to choose a different supplier. So let's start this process right at the very beginning, so that not even when you are starting to look at the requisition or submit a requisition, it may be too late because the PI may have already made his decision to go with a particular supplier. So that's our request to you, and we hope that you will comply with that. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sarosh Siganpuria. Oh, okay. I'll go over one more slide before I turn it over. So here are some of the thresholds that we have for federal fund purchases. Essentially, there are two things. There is a federal grants and federal contracts. And so you need to be mindful of federal grants and federal contracts. Federal grants follows uniform guidance requirements, and federal contracts follow the FAR requirements, which is the Federal Acquisition Regulations requirements. The thresholds are a little different for federal grants versus federal contracts. While the uniform guidance requires us to do a federal debarment checklist on any purchase of any dollar value, because it would be an extremely high administrative burden. We are emphasizing and making sure that we do the federal, the debarment checklist on federal grants and contracts, actually federal grants over $10,000. And if it's mixed funding, then it doesn't matter the value of the federal purchase. If the PO value is over 10,000, you would do a debarment verification. And Sarosh will also go over this again when he talks about everything in more details. But here are some of the thresholds that you need to be mindful of. And all of this is actually provided and listed in the federal fund checklist that also Sarosh is going to go over. Okay, now there is Sarosh.
I'm here.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Snehal. Hi, I'm Sarosh Siganpuri. I'm the Strategic Sourcing and Procurement Manager. Good afternoon. I just wanted to quickly introduce my group to you since we have some new employees. I'll just call out the names, and if each person could just wave out so each the group can see. I'll start with Keith Chamberlain.
You may have to say hi or something so that you pop up in the front.
Okay.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody.
There you go.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Patrick Coe.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Lucy Tedrock.
Hi, everyone.
Richard Courier.
Hello, everyone.
Richard is our new senior buyer. He just joined us from UCLA. Brianna Klett.
Hey, everybody.
Hello. And Brianna's new too. She just joined us a few weeks ago. Barbara Neiman.
Hello, team.
J.O.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, and the last is me. Hi. Okay. Next slide, please. As Snehal mentioned, I'm just going to go over the Fed Fund checklist page. Helen, the last just went down. Did it change?
Suresh, what are you looking for?
I can't see anything below price analysis. Can you guys see anything below price analysis?
No. So just talk to what's already highlighted.
Okay. For some reason, the portion below price analysis went away. Okay. So this is the Fed Funds checklist. I just want to quickly go over the form. The first section is pretty straightforward. On top, you see the date, the fund number, the requisition, PO number, which you all have that, buyer's name, total. So you can fill all of those boxes, which are straightforward. The next section is the general requirement. In that, basically, you have to mention if it's award and include the agreement number or the PO number, and you check that box there. The next box is the sole source, which we have to fill because it's all funds above $10,000 when you'll be filling this form. The next section is the award type. We need to figure out if it's grant, cooperative agreements or contracts or federal flow-through funds. I'll just briefly mention what flow-through funds are, and it's also mentioned elsewhere. But our federal flow-through funds are federal awards that flow through from another institution, like state, university, etc. So we just need to make sure you pick the right award type. After that, you go to section 2, and you pick the articles 2, 6, 11, 12, because those are all our terms and conditions in agreement. So you would pick those. The next section is the department verification. It says all orders, but we want to make sure we want to do it orders over or equal to 10K and above. The next one is the anti-lobby verification, which is equal to or greater than $100,000, and that's when you have to do the anti-lobby verification. And both this department verification and anti-lobby, Lucy will be going over in detail in her recording. The price analysis reasonable section, you need to do it greater than equal to 250. You have to ensure that if you're using a supply which is not competitively bid, to make sure you fill the SSPR, which says down there to ensure to fill section 3 of the SSPR. If it is competitively bid out, then you don't have to fill, you still have to fill the SSPR, but you don't have to fill the section 3 of the SSPR. And the last section, which I think got chalked out, is the profit and loss analysis section, which is also equal or greater than 250. And that also is the same thing. You don't have to, if you're using a competitively bid supplier, then you don't need to use the SSPR. If not, you need to fill that section too. Next slide. Okay, this one is good. Okay, great. So this is the second page of the Fed Funds checklist. And I know there are a lot of boxes. I'll try and go a little bit slower too. So this is the Fed Funds checklist. This is page 2. Oh, Helen, something you're doing, it chopped off again.
It's okay, Sarosh. It's in the presentation that they all have
Okay.
received. So go ahead.
Okay, yeah,
There you
keep
go.
it like that. Keep it there. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so this is the federal fund checklist, page 2. This is the section 3. On here, we need to first determine if it's commercial goods or non-commercial goods. So basically, the commercial goods are goods and services we can buy, right? And non-commercial goods are goods which are not openly available in the market, like weapons, military aircraft, military training, things like that. So first you have to figure out which one it is. The next one is Article 6, which is our terms and conditions. Next one is Article 2, which is in our terms and conditions. So you can pick that. The next 2 boxes, you need to figure out if it's tax exempt or not tax exempt. If they are tax exempt, you need to insert the following language, which is right there in the form. You need to insert that language in the requisition too. The next one is the Federal Funding Accountability and Transparent Act, which is FFATA. This is not applicable for flow-through funds, which I mentioned in the starting. So for this, it only will be applicable for greater or equal to 30,000 and above. And here we need to make sure the supplier is active and it's active in SAMS.gov. And after that, you need to fill the form, which is, again, there's a UCOP link, which is in the form. The next one is the department verification. This is great. This is different. The thresholds are different, like Snehal went. This is for contracts, so please make sure you know the thresholds. For department verification, you have to do the same process in SAMS.gov. And also there is selection at the bottom of the page too. And for anti-lobby, you need to verify that in SAMS.gov also to make sure that it's anti-lobby is done. And the detailed notes on the bottom of page 2 on that too, so you can follow that. The small business documentation, if it's greater or equal to 250, there's a form on our website. It says the same thing, and you have to fill that form and attach it to the requisition. For supplier small business subcontract plan, if there is a plan for that, please contact the small business group and they will walk you through what the process is for that. And that is for equal or greater than 750. And the last one we have is called through negotiation. It's called TINA. And that one is greater or equal to 2 million. You have to fill that form. And I've not seen too many, but feel free to connect with us, and we'll walk you through that form, the one for greater than 2 million. Next, I'll hand it over to Lucy, and she will talk on SAMS.gov.
Thank you, Sarosh. Hi, everyone. My name is Lucy Tendrock. I'm one of the senior buyers. Today, we'll be presenting a demo on debarment verification through SAM.gov. But before we show the demo, we did want to share a few slides about SAM.gov. For those of you who may not know, SAM.gov is an official website of the US government, and we use this website to verify that a supplier has not been debarred. You will need a SAM.gov account to properly use the website, and we do have some step-by-step instructions on how to create a SAM.gov account on the following few slides. I'll be showing the sign-in process on the demo that we've recorded, but these slides will be here for reference if you find that you need step-by-step instructions on how to create an account on SAM.gov. Before we play the demo, I did just want to add that it is a pre-recording, so if the audio is a little bit lower, please be sure to adjust the volume. Thanks, Helen. Please go ahead. As Sarosh mentioned earlier, debarment verification is required on orders $10,000 and above that are funded by federal grants and cooperative agreements. It is also required on orders $35,000 that are funded by federal contracts. To begin the verification process, you will need to be logged into SAM.gov. The link to SAM.gov is also available at the bottom of the federal fund checklist. Please note, if you have an account set up, you will need to create one. Our deck will have a few slides on account setup, so please be needed. I will be logging into my account from here as required at sign-in. On sam.gov, I will select sign-in. Click accept, and I will sign in using my UCI email. My secondary authentication is set up through a Google Authenticator app. I will be inputting the one-time code provided to proceed. Once you've logged in, you will need to click search to look for your supplier. You can use the search tool here at the top or within the keyword search down below. In this example, I will be searching for Fisher Scientific. You can search for all results containing the supplier's name, which typically populates various results, or you may search for the exact phrase. If you encounter multiple active results for the same supplier name, as we see in this example, select the record that matches the tax address in the KFS vendor profile. In this example, this will be the record that I will be selecting. Another scenario we've encountered is searching for a supplier that we know has previously been registered here that is suddenly no longer available. If this happens during your search, the supplier's registration may have expired. You can verify this by selecting the inactive box within the keyword search and running your search again. If you find your supplier has an expired registration, you'll need to complete the debarment anti-lobby certification form. Sarosh will be going over the form after this demo. Going back to our debarment search for Fisher Scientific, as you can see here, their registration is active with a future expiry date of January 6th. We'll need to click on the supplier's name to expand their registry. Within this page, we'll see the registration status one more time along with their expiration date. Once you've validated that their registration is active and not expired, you'll click on exclusions on the left panel. From here, what we're looking for is no active exclusion records. We will need to see this result uploaded in your KFS requisition, so please be sure to download a copy. To download, select the download option at the top of the page, select PDF, and adjust the file name if needed before clicking download. Again, please be sure to upload into your KFS requisition. We also use sam.gov for the anti-lobby verification. If anti-lobby also applies to your order, return to the entity registration. From here, select reps and certs on the left-hand side. We will need to make sure that the FAR 52.203-11 certification is listed. In this example, I see that it is listed. We will also see a copy of this uploaded in your requisition if anti-lobby applies to your order. To download a copy, reports, select FAR, select PDF, and adjust the file name if needed before downloading. As a reminder, if you have any questions that are not addressed or responded to in this meeting, please send them to our general inbox at procurement@uci.edu. Thank you. Thanks, Helen. And thanks, everyone. We'll hand the floor back to Sarosh now so that he can go over the debarment and anti-lobby certification form.
Great. Thank you, Lucy. Great recording. Hi, everyone. I'm back. Oh, the slide. Okay. Okay, there you go. Okay. So when do we use the department and anti-lobby certification form? So we use the department and anti-lobby certification form when the supplier record is not in SAMS.gov. The supplier record is in SAMS.gov but is not active. And for anti-lobby verification, if the FAR 52.20311 is not listed in the supplier record, which you just saw in Lucy's recording. When those things are missing, that's when you fill this form, and it is on our website too, to fill it. And I will be I'll be showing you how to fill the form too. Detailed instructions are available on page 2 of the federal fund checklist in the notes sections also for your reference. Next slide, Helen. So this is actually the form, how you will be filling it. I put little green annotation so it's easy for everybody to see it. So the first section on top, the supplier name, that's filled by the departmental buyers. They will be filling that. If it is federal grant or federal contract, that will be also filled by the departmental buyer. The next section below that has to be that the supplier will send it. So you have to send it to the supplier, and the supplier will certify the appropriate correct boxes, which you see in the slide. Next slide, Helen. Correct. So this slide, the departmental buyer completes this section. He's going to select whether it's a federal grant or federal contract. And based on that, you'll check one of the 2 boxes. Next slide. This is the last section of the page where the supplier will certify his signature, his printed name, company, and his date. And then you have to take this form and again, make sure you attach it to the requisition. This is the SSPR form. I'm not going in detail because we've already done a training on it, but for federal funds, make sure you select the appropriate section if applicable for section 3 and 4. Make sure all the boxes are checked, none of them are empty. And the same thing for the federal funds checklist too. Make sure all the boxes are checked. Next one. These are some of the FAQs. I'm just going to go quickly over them. How does the department know if they need to do a department check? So one of the things what we have done and the team has worked on, you will get a message will trigger on it, and yeah, you'll see the message, and I cannot see it, but basically it says FG. This is my message. So based on which account you pick, it'll automatically create that message. So if you select FC, there'll be an FC contract will appear on top. If you select PC, that will be the flow through. It will show on top. So this is just the message I have put it. So this is your indication to see that, yes, now I need to make sure all the federal compliances are done. At what threshold is the department verification required? The federal grants and cooperative agreement, 10K and above. And for federal contracts, it's 35K and above. Snehal also went through the threshold list in the starting. We want to reiterate it again. At what dollar threshold is the anti-lobby verification required? Federal grants and cooperative agreements, 100K and above. And for contracts, it's 150K and above. I've also put a definition of federal flow-through funds, which I already mentioned in my slide first. If somebody wants to take a look at it, it's there. Next slide. The next slide is, do department and anti-lobby verification checks apply to PAL card purchases? The answer is yes, they are the same, but there is a hard block on purchases over 10K on PAL card for federal purchases. So please keep that in mind. The threshold is only 10K for that. Do we have to perform verification checks for contracted suppliers? Yes. Department and anti-lobby verification needs to be performed even if the purchase is from a contracted supplier from UCOP. And the reason is sometimes the supplier does get debarred. So we could have done an RFP few years ago, but in the meantime, supplier could have done something, and if they got debarred. And from what Snehal said, it's very important we have the right debarment certifications attached. So that's why we really emphasize, even if it's a contracted supplier, to do this step. Do we have to perform verification checks for purchases with mixed funding? Now, this comes up quite a lot. So yes, the debarment and anti-lobby verifications need to be performed for purchases with mixed funding if total purchase amount is over 10K above, irrespective of federal fund dollar amounts. I would also like to give an example so everybody can register it. So say, for example, if the Fed funds are only $2,000 and the regular funds are, say, $9,000, in this case, you still need to fill the necessary form and necessary verification. So I just wanted to give you with the numbers too, so it's kind of clear for this step. This is our last slide of the presentation, and hopefully we have put some of the resources which we thought are very important. Please review them as needed. We have the UCOP Fed Fund resources. We have the suspended contractors, SAM.gov, SSPR form, and service. And for any questions, please send them to procurement@uci.edu, and then we can contact you accordingly. Next slide. I think we are done. And if you have any questions, we are all there to answer. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sarosh.
Thank you.
Appreciate you walking them through some of the details.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I just, as you all can tell, there could be a lot that you may need to absorb, but once you get comfortable with it and get to understand some of the basic requirements, you probably will be going through the same things over and over again. Typically, if the dollar amounts are less, it's not as complicated. If it gets pretty big, then it can be more involved, but that doesn't happen too frequently, as Sarosh said. One of the things I wanted to confirm and clarify as Sarosh was going through the federal fund checklist, the general questions that typically come up are one that is, as I mentioned, about mixed funding, because some may think that the federal fund purchase dollar amount is under $10,000, although the entire PO value may be greater than 10,000. And for us to be a little more conservative, we are asking everybody to conduct the debarment verification, even if the federal fund purchase amount may be less than 10,000. The reason for that is that when the auditors are looking at our documents, they typically look at the total PO value and try to pick those POs that are over $10,000. And they don't take the time and the energy to go through and look at what is the actual federal portion of this dollar value. And rather than having to explain to the auditors that, oh, but the federal amount was less than 10,000, we would rather not get into that Q&A and investigation further further on the PO. So we are asking that we be conservative on this and have the debarment verification uploaded onto the PO or the requisition, even if the federal amount is less than 10,000. And same thing would go for federal contracts if it was less than $35,000. But if the PO amount was greater than 35, we might as well get the verifications done for that particular purchase. The other thing I wanted to mention is, and the question comes up, is that do we need to fill out the SSPR form even if it's a contracted supplier? And as Sarosh mentioned, we do want to get the debarment done on the supplier, even though it's a contracted supplier, because the federal government wants to know the time when you make the purchase. Is the supplier debarred or not debarred and not suspended? That's what they want to know. The other thing that, excuse me, you'll also notice on the SSPR form, there is a section under federal funds and non-federal funds if it's an existing contract or an agreement. If we have an agreement, we would like you to check that box and put the agreement number. And what we would also like you to do is verify that that agreement is still valid and active. because we have found and had situations when somebody may think that the contract is active when it may have already expired. And we don't want to mention an expired contract number and think that it's going to fly. So we have to be mindful of that. As he was going through some of the details in the federal fund checklist, he kind of mentioned that the SSPR is not required, but what he meant was the SSPR is required, but you don't need to fill out like the price reasonableness section. You may not need to fill that out because it got covered into the competitive bidding process. So as long as you have the agreement number mentioned, then we can reference the RFP that was conducted, and the RFP would have the price reasonableness and the analysis done. And that's why that section may not need to be filled out on a competitively bid contract. So just bear that in mind and make sure that you fill out the SSPR form and put the agreement number at the very top. And the rest of the sections don't need to be filled out. Okay, now let's go to the questions. Doreen, you have some questions.
Let me read them out loud first. So first question was, how about for service preventative maintenance agreements renewals?
If the service maintenance is paid on federal funds, and if it's a purchase order amendment, you may not need to do the federal fund checklist. But if you are going to create a new PO, any amount that any service maintenance or any purchases that are over the threshold, you should go ahead and do the debarment checklist. Go through the debarment process, checklist check process.
I'm getting a lot of private messages. If you can please direct your messages to the chat for everyone to see. That way they can also read your question. My next question that I received was for non-federal fund purchases under a current UCOP agreement that are over $100,000. Is an SSPR needed?
No, if we have a current UCOP agreement and the spend is over 100K, we don't need the SSPR form.
Here you just said they need to fill out the form with contract number, agreement number.
This is non-federal, Helen. This is non-federal fund purchase. I talked about the federal fund purchases.
Yes.
This is non-federal funded purchase.
And I received a request to go over the requirements for federal grants and cooperative agreements on our checklist form. It's number 2. So Helen, if you can go back to that form, Article 2 through 12. No, higher up, please. Right there.
Yeah, 2 to 12, you will just put all in file because they are all the terms and conditions.
Right. So what Sarosh was talking about is Articles 2 through 12 in our terms and conditions document. So essentially, our UC terms and conditions incorporates many of these requirements that uniform guidance has. And that's another reason why it's extremely important for us to make sure that our UC terms and conditions are actually associated with any purchase on federal funds, because that kind of covers a lot of the requirements of federal funds and uniform guidance. So that's why, you make sure that basically when you have the terms and conditions associated with any purchase, because that's what the PO is, PO has the terms and conditions, you can comfortably check off those boxes saying that, yes, all of these requirements are covered in our terms and conditions. Hope that was the question that people had.
Merle, does that answer your question? You can come off mute.
Yes, thank you.
Anything else that we can clarify for you?
I just received another question. On the debarment form, the top indicates to be completed by procurement in red. This is above the supplier name and it is confusing. I heard today that the department buyer needs to enter the supplier name information along with the PO or requisition number. Can this be changed then on the form, or can you remove to be completed by procurement above the supplier name?
Yes, Emma, we can definitely change that if that's creating confusion. As I said at the very beginning of this whole training, that anybody who actually is making any purchases, even for the departments, is technically part of procurement. You know, we shouldn't think of procurement means central procurement and only the 27 folks that are in central procurement are procurement. No, every buyer in every department is part and parcel of procurement. And that's one thing that we need to change, and we need to change people's culture or their mindset. That, you know, a departmental buyer also is part of the procurement process. And so this procurement is used very in general, meaning anybody who makes a purchase is part of procurement. But we can definitely change that just to be more explicit, but that's how we are supposed to look at it.
Do we have any other questions?
If not, I would ask, as I always do, for you all to please take the time to fill out the survey. We definitely would like to hear back from you as to what are the topics that we should be covering in these trainings. I hope that you're finding these trainings to be very valuable. And yeah, we would like to hear from you. What are the topics that you would like us to cover so that we can help clarify any of your concerns and doubts? I do know that a lot of departments have a lot of concerns and a lot of questions, and you guys feel very comfortable calling our department folks to ask for questions and get clarification. Ideally, we would like to have those things provided as training so that you all are self-reliant and don't have to call our teams every time you have a question. And you know, for us having to go through these requirements on a one-on-one basis. Although we don't mind doing that, it is more efficient if we can train everybody with all the requirements that you all need to be compliant with. So please take the time to fill out the survey. We would like to hear from you what's working well, what's not working well, what can we do to make it better, because we are here to continuously improve our processes and you know, help you be more efficient in how you perform your tasks and your jobs. And also wanted to let you know that we do have the step-by-step process in SAM.gov that we had presented in August. And so those slides are also part of the presentation. So if you are, you know, if you have any questions or want to go back and look at it, and if you don't want to listen to the video, although Lucy has done a fantastic job of preparing the video, you still have these slides that you can quickly reference to go in through SAM.gov if you want to go that route. So you have both the options available. And if there are no more questions, then we can give you everybody 15 minutes back. And once again, I want to thank you for taking the time to attend this training session, and hope you found it to be very helpful and beneficial.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sarosh.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.